Well, hello. I'm Joanna with Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching, and we are talking fall time change, which is happening this coming Sunday, November 1st, 2020. So we've got Halloween this weekend. We have a blue full moon, and we have the time change. How about that for uh, putting everything together in 2020? So I wanted to give you some tips and suggestions on how to manage this time change so that it's easier for you and that things go smoothly. So let me just give you a couple of sleep facts about time changes before I get into the nitty gritty on how to manage it for your family and for yourself as well. So the good news about this fall time change is that we get kind of a bonus hour in the morning. You'll receive sunlight in the morning, which is always really wonderful, especially if you like to get up and get your day started. The bad news about the fall time change is that it can trigger what we call early rising. And early rising is when we want to wake up and start our day somewhere between 4 and 6 a.m. So if you have a baby or a toddler or a child, really under the age of 10, that is already prone to early rising or is a very sensitive to sleep changes, sleep time changes, which you probably have experienced if you've traveled with your child, then this particular fall time change might be challenging for you. Because people that are already prone to early rising or have difficulty in making the transitions with time changes, this one can be a doozy. So I just want to kind of preface that so that if you fall in that camp, that you really do make your best efforts to follow the guidelines I'm recommending, and that you are patient with the process of your body making or your child's body making those adjustments. And so what we're going to do is there's two approaches. There's what I call the proactive approach or the kind of just in time approach. So the proactive approach would be a situation where starting today, you would move your child's bedtime, like pretty much everything, nap time, bedtime, mealtime, up by 10 or 15-minute increments. So if they normally go to bed at 7:15, you would start putting them down at 7:30. And then tomorrow night, you put them down at 7:45. And then the next night after that at 8 p.m. So the idea is to start to add increments of time so that by the time we fall back, your child's now adjusted to the new time. And so if you do this in small increments between now and Sunday, it will be a lot easier because a full adjustment to a time change can take anywhere between 7 and 14 days for the body to come back into rhythm. And so if you get ahead of this, even by 5 or 6 days, then you're cutting down the amount of time it's going to take for the adjustment to happen. And again, this kind of plan ahead strategy is best for children that are already prone to early rising and or also are very sensitive to time changes. But the thing that you have to recognize is that when you're moving the schedule, everything has to move. So you'll want to move nap slightly later so that bedtime can slightly be later. And then hopefully in the next couple of days, they'll sleep in a little bit later. So then that next morning nap is a little bit later, lunch is a little bit later. Everything's just getting a little bit later over the course of the next several days leading up to the time change. The other option is to do the kind of just in time, which is, on November 1st, you change your clocks. And then, of course, you're going to wake up that morning and you're going to start your day and you're going to immediately just move into the new time. And you start doing your meals at the new time, your naps at the new time, bedtime at the new time. And, this makes it easier from a logistics point of view. However, this might mean that it might be the 7 to 14 days before everybody in your household has made the appropriate adjustment. And that's normal. Now, a couple of tips on how to kind of speed up the adjustment is that morning sunlight, exposing yourself to morning sunlight becomes very, very important at this time of year. So especially if you have a child that is experiencing early rising. So if your child is waking up after 6 and there is sunlight outside and they're still having a hard time meeting the time change, getting natural sunlight first thing in the morning before 10 a.m. will be really, really important. So I want you to keep that in mind. And the other thing is that I want to mention is about what to do if you have a child that starts waking up at 5 o'clock, 5:15, 5:30. This is very common. And again, what you need to do is manage the early rising behavior really specifically so that it doesn't become embedded. Because what happens to a lot of families is they do the time change. They figure, oh, it'll take about 7 to 14 days for my child to adjust. And then a month later, they kind of have this awareness of, oh my gosh, my child is still waking up at 5. What do I do now? If that happens, I don't want that to happen to you. So that's why I'm going to give you some recommendations. But if that does happen to you, I want you to know not a problem, not a problem. We can always, 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 any sleep challenge you and your family ever stumble upon, it is always solvable. Okay, so that's the good news. And so I'm going to be offering fall sleep tune-up sessions so that it becomes really easy. You book a call, you fill out a form in advance so I know all the background of everything that's happening with your child's sleep behaviors, both at bedtime, in the middle of the night, and the early rising, as well as the naps, so that I can come to the call prepared to assist you and find a way out of that early rising behavior. That's why we call it the fall tune-up. So I will a little bit later put the link in there on where you can schedule your fall tune-up. But in the meantime, what I would like to do is make sure it doesn't happen to you that you need a fall tune-up. And so if you have a child that is having an early rising event, somewhere between 4 and 6, the most important thing you can do is do not expose them to light or food before 6 a.m. If you do that by accident, then what you're doing is embedding that early rising behavior because you've essentially turned on their hunger clock. That's what I call it, when the body starts to expect calories at 5:15, 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And if it's a double whammy and you expose them to either natural light or, ambient light, or you hand them an iPad, you're also going to be embedding that early rising behavior. And we don't want to embed early rising because it is a very, very stubborn sleep behavior. And sometimes it can take us weeks to unwind it when it in fact becomes embedded. So if your child is having early rising in the transition to the fall time change, don't expose them to light. Don't give them food before 6 a.m. So then you're saying to yourself, well, what do I do? What do I do? So whether it's a baby or a toddler or a child, you want to go back into the room with them. And obviously you want to try to coach them back to sleep. That's the ideal situation because they're not really necessarily ready to wake up and start their day. It's just that their circadian rhythm is off because of the time change. So if you're successful in them even falling back to sleep for 5, 10, 15 minutes, then that's fantastic. But most likely these first week of early rising behavior due to a fall time change, the likelihood is that you're just going to be accompanying your child in their bedroom until exactly 6 o'clock. That's when you can have the go sign to start your day. But the key thing is that you never want to rescue your child out of darkness. So if you're all in the room together and you're waiting for the clock to switch from 5:59 to 6 a.m., then you don't want to then just grab them out of the crib or out of the master bedroom and then leave the room and turn on the light and start your day, because what you're reinforcing to them is that they can be rescued in the dark. And if we have to do a fall tune-up session and we determine that the early rising behavior has become embedded, then if we have created also another challenge, which is where the child is being used to being rescued in the dark, then that creates a situation when we start some training to get the early rising to leave, that you're going to create more tears. So what's really important is that you want to do something that we call the dramatic wake up, which is at 6 o'clock, you would leave the room for 10 seconds, then come back into the room, turn on the light, open the shades, say good morning, and then allow your child to get out of the bed or the crib. And this sets an anchor for them so that they know that when it's time to wake up and start the day, the routine is the lights go on, the shades go up, and there's a greeting. And it just trust me, we want to always, because I'm a gentle sleep coach and I don't believe in cried out, I am always looking for every angle I possibly can on how to minimize tears, frustration, anger, agitation when we have to look at a child's sleep behaviors and help those behaviors be improved. So doing dramatic wake up becomes really important in this fall time transition. And I'm hoping that you will definitely believe me on that. It's a small thing to do, but it does make all the difference. I also just wanted to mention a couple of other things that, if you have a toddler or a child, I should say more like a child, like 2.5, 3, 3.5 and up, that's in a big boy bed or a big girl bed, you're definitely, if you don't already have this, you're probably going to want to get a tot clock. I love the Hatch. And the reason why is that we need to help them understand that when the Hatch is a tot clock, so you can set it to hatch to any time that you're willing to let your child get out of bed. And that time frame represents a color. So for example, you might have the light be red when it's not time to get out of bed. And so in the early rising event, the child can then be coached to look at the clock and recognize, although it seems to have light outside, but my clock says it's red, which means I know as a 4 or 5-year-old not to get out of bed. So that's really important for those of you that have older children that can have a little bit of self-independence and guidance on being able to look at a color and represent kind of what the ground rules are for them to be able to get out of the room or not. If you do not have room darkening shades yet, and that's something you haven't put on your priority list, I would highly recommend doing that now, because remember, it's bright in the morning. And so if you want to have your child sleep past 6 to 6:30 or 7 or 8, if you're really lucky, then we want to make sure that the light from the outside is not going to then have them start waking up earlier, and that's the problem. So there's lots of things to consider, and maybe your child's going to do great, and maybe you as the adult is going to have a hard time. This is very common. Families will call me and they'll say, my child's doing great, but I'm having a hard time. So of course, for the adults, I want to give some recommendations that for you too, it's really important to follow a solid, predictable bedtime routine. If you are, prone to digital devices, which we all are, we are on this phone all the time, whether we're checking email, scrolling social media, catching a show, you want to try to turn that off at least an hour before you hope to be asleep. The other thing you would want to do is dim the lights about an hour before you want to go to sleep. So we have to kind of calm everything down, the nervous system down, to be able to adjust to the new time change. And if we keep ourselves stimulated by having the digital device, or the lights are on, or the music's on, or we're having all these conversations, that's just going to make it more difficult, right? So I just posted something here that I think will be helpful to you. This is my Sleep Matters, Get Your Ages and Stages sleep guidelines. So a lot of families will say, well, I don't even really know what my child's supposed to be doing in terms of sleep at this age and stage. Like how many naps should they be taking, or how long should each nap be, or what's a normal bedtime, what's a normal wake up time. So in this guide, I've listed all of that out there for you so that if you go into this time change and things start getting a little bit odd, I wanted you to have at least something you could come back to as like a foundation to be able to help yourself. So in closing, I just want to say that the time change, it happens every year, right? And I'm always kind of shocked, actually. I'm not a big fan of this time change. I love my long summer nights. But this is what we have to do. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I need a sleep tune-up, I'm going to post right here in the comments the way that you can sign up for that. You would just basically go to my website, which is blissfulbabysleepcoaching.com, and you would go to the contact me page, and you would fill out the form and then just put down sleep tune up. And then I will send you the information on how to get on my calendar. And I know I can absolutely help you if you find yourself in a situation. Anyways, I hope this was helpful to you. If I am also going to be, for everybody that's part of my Blissful Baby community, I send out this video on email, and I also list out all the tips and suggestions. You'll also find it out on my blog as well. So if you need to go back and look at some, specific data, the two ways to do that is to go to Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching and look at the blog, which will be posted in about an hour after this video downloads. And then if you want to get on my mail list, which then that's really easy, because then you'll definitely always get an email from me with what I wrote in my Facebook Live and all the data that you would want. So good luck with this fall time change. I'm here to help if anything gets awkward or difficult. And I hope that you enjoy Halloween, the blue full moon, and the time change here in 2020. Thanks so much. Take care.